The seat leaned back, and the female was unresponsive from an apparent gunshot. It did not appear this was the result of a robbery. Listen to that. Those are the chilling words pulled straight from a police report documenting just a horrific scene in what should have been a quiet park. We've got a young woman, her entire life ahead of her, found completely motionless in the driver's seat. And here's the thing, there were no missing valuables, no signs of a frantic struggle for a purse, just a single, tragic outcome that immediately told detectives, they weren't dealing with some random thief, they were hunting a killer.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the meticulous, really fascinating investigation that ultimately brought justice for an 18-year-old girl and her unborn child. We're going to unravel the whole web of lies, break down the timeline, trace the digital footprints, and even listen in on the interrogation tapes to see exactly how investigators connected the dots in a case that took almost a year to crack. Let's get into it.
Section 1. A chilling discovery. Sanford, Florida, November 11th, 2022.
Okay, let's set the scene. We are in Sanford, Florida. It's a city about 30 minutes or so north of Orlando. And on the night of November 11th, things escalated incredibly fast. At 7:08 p.m., the victim sends her final text message. Fast forward to just before midnight, right around 11:55 p.m., and an officer on a completely routine patrol spots her car. The doors are shut, the engine is literally still running, and then at 1 a.m., we get this massive turning point. A friend named Simone rushes up to the crime scene in an absolute panic, telling the officers she just felt like something was, quote, off. That frantic midnight arrival, it changed the entire trajectory of this investigation.
Now, the specifics of the crime scene were just incredibly eerie. Detectives found a gray Nissan running. All the windows were rolled up except for the driver's side. There was blood on the ground, blood on the door, but here's the crucial detail. The victim's small purse was resting totally undisturbed on the passenger floorboard, and a purple cell phone was sitting right between her legs. Finding her wallet and phone like that, it instantly ruled out a robbery. Whoever did this didn't want her stuff. Oh, and outside the car, detectives found just one single 9mm shell casing.
Section 2. The prime suspect. The midnight tip.
And that brings us right back to the sudden arrival of Simone, the victim's friend. That midnight tip she gave detectives was basically their very first and honestly most critical lead of the whole shebang. Thanks to her, the absolute tragedy of this case comes into focus. The victim was 18-year-old Kaylin Fiengo, and she was 13 weeks pregnant. According to her friend, Kaylin wasn't just hanging out at the park by chance. She went there specifically to meet up with someone she called Baby Daddy Number 2. Well, investigators quickly identified this guy as Donovan Faison. And get this, his listed address wasn't far from the crime scene at all, which instantly made him their prime suspect.
Now, you might be wondering how they tied him to her that night. It's a perfect example of how modern investigations work. Before they even brought Donovan in, detectives dug into Kaylin's iCloud backup. And on November 10th, literally the day before she was murdered, an Instagram account called Global Kids, which they proved belonged to Donovan, messaged her basically saying, just want to talk. Kaylin replies, we can talk, I'm just not arguing with you. That exchange proved, absolutely beyond a shadow of a doubt, that they were coordinating a meetup just hours before her death.
Section 3. The interrogation. November 16th, 2022.
All right, so fast forward 5 days. Detectives finally pay Donovan Faison a visit at his apartment. They sit him down in the back of a squad car for an interrogation. And put yourself in the detective's shoes for a second. You've got a suspect whose digital footprint already ties him to the victim, but you really need to see how he reacts under pressure. What happens next is just one of the most bizarre things you'll ever see in a homicide case. They're discussing the violent death of a young, pregnant woman, and Donovan's whole vibe is just casual. He's actually annoyed. When the police showed up, he was complaining about not having his shoes, he was whining about people taking pictures of him, and he literally tells the detectives, I really just wanted to wipe. Yeah, I was right on the toilet. The complete lack of empathy, or even just appropriate gravity for the situation, was honestly staggering.
And as you'd expect, Donovan's story was completely shattered by the actual facts. He claimed he was just babysitting that night. He totally downplayed their connection, calling it a little sex relationship, and swore up and down he hadn't even seen her in weeks, let alone plan to meet up at the park. But her friends, they knew a very different truth. They knew for a fact Donovan was fully aware of the pregnancy, they knew he was actively pressuring her for an abortion, and they knew Kaylin had told them she was meeting him on that exact Friday night.
Then, during that exact same squad car interview, Donovan just casually drops this massive red flag. He actually voluntarily admits to deleting all of his Instagram messages with Kaylin. When the cops ask if he still has their chat history, he's just like, "Oh yeah, I've been erased them." He really thought that by deleting the app data on his phone, he had totally severed the connection. But as we're going to see, this just perfectly sets the stage for the massive role digital forensics is about to play in cracking this case wide open.
So we really have to ask, was Donovan Faison telling the truth? I mean, he was acting incredibly confident. He offered up this whole alibi, claiming he was with his mom and then went home to babysit his newborn daughter while his girlfriend was out. He clearly thought he had outsmarted the police. But investigators, they were quietly working in the background, putting together a puzzle he didn't even know existed.
Section 4. The Digital Smoking Gun. Reconstructing the Data. By December 2022, detectives managed to pull the complete data reports from Donovan's phone. And what they uncovered was a digital footprint that told a completely harrowing story. This was the digital smoking gun that absolutely obliterated his carefully constructed alibi. Let's trace it. Back on September 14th, Kaylin tells him she's pregnant, and he immediately pushes for an abortion. Then, jump to November 8th. Just 3 days before the murder, Donovan receives a photo of her ultrasound. This triggers this huge visceral reaction, leading him to text a friend named Woody. And finally, on November 11th, the day of the murder, Kaylin's own messages confirm to multiple friends that she's heading out to meet Donovan. This timeline completely exposes his growing, simmering anger, leading right up to the crime.
But the absolute most horrific piece of undeniable proof, they found it in that text exchange with Woody. Right after seeing that black and white ultrasound photo, Donovan texts his friend, quote, "She gotta get cropped out on, bro." Wow. This right here is the climax of the investigation. It is not just some casual deleted message. It's a documented, premeditated declaration of his intent to end her life.
When you break down the tragic context surrounding that text, the evidence is just overwhelming. He wasn't just annoyed about the pregnancy, he was enraged by that ultrasound photo. He literally swore on his brother's grave in those messages that he would crop her out. He even told Woody he was so furiously angry that he punched a hole in his apartment wall. And here is the kicker, the actual physical proof. When police executed a search warrant at Donovan's apartment, they found a hole in the wall that matched his digital confession perfectly. Armed with this absolute mountain of evidence, they finally arrested him months later, in August of 2023.
Section 5. The Final Verdict. The Trial of Donovan Faison.
You know, they say the gears of justice turn slowly, but they do turn. Fast forward to October 2025, where Donovan Faison finally sits in a Seminole County courtroom to face a jury of his peers. Let's walk through exactly what convictions the jury handed down. Step 1. They held him fully accountable for both lives, returning a guilty verdict for killing an unborn child by injury to the mother. Step 2. A guilty verdict for burglary of a conveyance with an assault or battery with a firearm, which basically means he crossed a threshold by reaching into her car to commit the crime. And Step 3. All of this triggered the most severe sentencing phase possible under the law.
To put that into perspective, let's look at the exact definition of premeditation under the law. Premeditated murder requires hard proof that the killer rationally considered the timing or the method beforehand. They didn't just snap. Those recovered text messages to his friend Woody, where he literally vowed to crop her out days before the shooting, that proved the necessary premeditation for the absolute harshest penalty available. 11-1. On October 30th, 2025, that was the near-unanimous vote from the jury. 11 jurors recommended the death penalty for Donovan Faison. Shortly after that, the judge formally sentenced him to death, and he was sent off to the Union Correctional Institution in Florida.
So 2 lives were tragically cut short that night at Coastline Park. But it was the digital footprint, the very text messages a killer thought he had cleverly erased while sitting on his couch, that ensured justice was finally delivered. It really leaves us with a powerful thought to chew on. In an age where our devices record our every single move and every deleted secret eventually seems to come to light, can anyone truly get away with murder anymore?